At Novella Station, we deliver drama faster than your boss delivers deadlines. Except ours are actually fun. Think cliffhangers, plot twists, and enough sass to power a reality show marathon. Subscribe our channel for tales that tug at your heartstrings. And don't forget to leave like and comments. Chapter 1. The first time Ethan saw Isabella, the world seemed to pause. The crowded cafe around him blurred into background noise, the clinking of cups, the hum of conversation, while she stood at the counter, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear with a grace that felt almost rehearsed by fate. In that suspended second, he saw the exact color of her eyes, the deep, thoughtful brown of old oak leaves in autumn rain. Isabella noticed him too, though she pretended not to, carefully studying the chalkboard menu as if her life depended on choosing between a latte or a cappuccino. There was something disarming about his quiet confidence, the way his smile, when it finally appeared, carried a warmth that didn't demand attention but simply gave it, like sunlight through a window. When their eyes finally met, a glancing blow over the rim of her coffee cup as she turned from the counter. It was a jolt, not a spark, but a deep, resonant knowing, as if two strangers had recognized each other from a forgotten dream. The first time they truly spoke was under the shared shelter of a dark green umbrella, caught in a sudden spring shower on the cafe's doorstep. Ethan's voice was warm and hesitant as he stepped closer. I think I saw you inside. It's coming down like the sky forgot how to hold water." Isabella turned, a smile touching her lips. "Yeah, I was just about to make a run for it. Bad idea, clearly. Could be worse," he said, holding up his umbrella. "I have a shield. More than enough for two, if you don't mind sharing a dry patch of sidewalk." Her eyes flicked from the rain to his face. "A shared dry patch sounds like a luxury right now. I'd be grateful." They stepped into the rain, shoulders almost touching. "So, is carrying a large umbrella just a general life philosophy?" "Always be prepared," she asked. He chuckled. "More like a recent development. I just bought it. The spine on my old one finally gave up. A tragic death by gust of wind." "A hero's farewell," she said, laughing softly. "And now this one gets its first mission. No pressure." After a few steps in the comforting drum of the rain, he said, "I'm Ethan, by the way." "Isabella." "So, Ethan, do you always rescue damsel from distress?" He feigned deep thought. "Only the ones who leave fascinating books behind on cafe tables." Isabella stopped walking, turning to him under the canopy with playful shock. "The shadow of the wind. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot it. I was rereading my favorite passage and just left it there." "I know. I saw," Ethan said, his voice gentle. "I gave it to Leo at the counter. He said he'd keep it safe for you." She let out a relieved breath, a genuine, bright smile lighting her face. "Thank you. That book it's an old friend. You saved my umbrella-less self and my book in one day. That's a pretty good record. I'm just glad I was in the right place at the right time," he said, unable to look away from her smile. Twice. The next day, Isabella was at her usual table when Ethan walked in, her book in his hand. "Looking for this?" he asked. Her whole face brightened. "You found it. Or rescued it again. Thank you." She took it, her fingers brushing his, and opened it instinctively. A pressed daisy fluttered into her lap. "Oh," she breathed. She picked up the delicate flower and saw the marked page. Reading the underlined passage silently, her cheeks flushed slightly. Her voice was soft as she recited the words. "Every book, every volume you see here has a soul. The soul of the person who wrote it and of those who read it and lived and dreamed with it." She looked up at him, her eyes wide and soft. "This is my favorite part." "Mine too," Ethan said, his own voice quiet. "I thought the daisy seemed like a better bookmark than a receipt. Less likely to get lost." Madi sit?" Isabella asked, her tone shy but eager. "I was just about to order a coffee. Can I buy you one? As a thank you? For the umbrella, and the daisy, and the book rescue." A slow, relieved smile spread across his face. "I'd love that, but only if you tell me why this is your favorite part." They sat. The conversation started with the book, then spiraled into other books, terrible movie adaptations, their shared hatred of lukewarm tea, their secret love for old map illustrations. Hours seemed to compress into minutes. Finally, Isabella leaned forward, cradling her now-cold coffee. "Okay, I have a question. A serious one." Ethan mirrored her posture, captivated. "I embraced. Why do we call it falling in love?" She mused, tracing the grain of the wooden table. "It sounds so accidental, so helpless, like you just trip into it." Ethan considered this, his gaze steady on her. "What would you call it?" She thought for a moment, then looked up, meeting his eyes directly, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I don't know. It feels more deliberate than a fall. More like finding a language only you two understand. Or coming home, to a place you didn't even know you were missing." The chatter of the café faded into a distant hum. Ethan felt the world still around her words. They weren't a question. They were an offering, a tiny, fragile truth placed between them. His voice was low, a little rough with feeling. "Then it's not falling. It's arriving." They sat there, not speaking, the air between them crackling with a new, thrilling understanding. A promise of countless more conversations and countless more shared dry patches under any storm. Equals X equals. Isabella, in turn, found comfort in his steadiness, a calm presence that made her feel seen in a way no one else had. He listened to her stories, her childhood in a house by the sea, her fear of hummingbirds, too fast, too miraculous, her dream of visiting the astronomy observatory on the hill, as if they were sacred texts. He remembered the names of her characters when she talked about the novel she was writing. Days turned into weeks, and soon their lives intertwined effortlessly, not with grand declarations, but with quiet, deliberate stitches. Walks under the fading glow of streetlights, where his hand would brush hers until their fingers finally laced together, fitting like a lock and key. Laughter echoing in quiet parks as they shared childhood anecdotes, their breaths making clouds in the crisp evening air. Whispered promises that felt too fragile to speak aloud were instead exchanged in other ways. The extra blanket he left on her sofa for her naps. The way she always saved the last bite of her pastry for him. The mixtape of rain sounds and piano music he made for her sleepless nights. Their love wasn't loud or dramatic. It was tender, unfolding like petals in spring, each moment a gentle affirmation. The one such moment arrived not on a special day, but on an ordinary Wednesday. Isabella's tiny, book-crammed apartment was filled with the warm, spiced scent of a cooking experiment gone wonderfully wild. Ethan leaned against the kitchen doorway, simply watching her. She was a whirlwind of concentration, her brow furrowed as she stirred a pot of simmering sauce, a dusting of flour like snow on her sweater. "I think," she said, squinting a recipe card splattered with oil, "that the recipe meant a pinch of cayenne, not a small avalanche. This might be aggressive." Ethan's smile was soft, full of unabashed affection. "I like aggressive pasta. It shows character." She laughed, waving the wooden spoon at him. "You say that now. Just wait until you're drinking milk straight from the carton to put out the fire." A slow, melodic song began to drift from her old record player in the corner, a timeless jazz standard that filled the small space like honey. Ethan watched her for another beat, her lips moving slightly as she read the next step, utterly absorbed in her task. Then, without a word, he pushed himself off the doorframe and stepped into the chaos. He moved close behind her, reaching around to gently close his hand over hers on the wooden spoon. He guided it to rest on the counter. She stilled, then tilted her head back to look up at him, her eyes sparkling with playful suspicion. "What are you doing? I'm at a critical juncture here. The garlic is at its peak." He turned her slowly in the circle of his arms until she faced him. "The garlic can manage without you for 3 minutes," he murmured, his voice low and warm. "Is that so?" she asked, her hands, still dusted with flour, coming to rest lightly on his shoulders. "It is. Because right now," he said, pulling her just a little closer, "I am dancing with you." A soft, breathless laugh escaped her. "Here? Between the rogue onion peel and the bubbling sauce." "The only place I want to be," he said simply. And so they danced. There, In the narrow space between the stove and the refrigerator, they began to sway. The music swelled around them, and Isabella's fierce concentration melted away. She let her head fall gently to his chest with a sigh of surrender. The flour on her hands dusted his dark shirt like a spray of tiny stars, a constellation mapped against his heart. He rested his cheek against her hair, breathing in the scent of her shampoo mixed with rosemary and garlic. It was the most perfect perfume. He placed a soft kiss on the crown of her head, then another on her temple. When she tilted her face up, her eyes closed in a smile of pure contentment on her lips, he kissed the corner of that smile. "This is nice," she whispered, her voice muffled against his shirt. "It's better than nice," he whispered back, his hand drawing slow circles on her back. "It's everything." Around them, the evidence of their shared life stood as quiet witnesses. His scarf draped over her hook by the door, her favorite brand of tea in his cupboard next to the coffee he always made for her. In this simple, unplanned embrace, with the sauce quietly bubbling beside them and the record gently crackling, a final, silent vow was made. It wasn't a promise of a distant, abstract forever. It was a promise of now, of choosing every single day to come home to this, to each other. Outside the rain-kissed window, the streetlights flickered on one by one, painting gold paths on the wet pavement. But inside, in the warm, messy, fragrant heart of her kitchen, they had already found their way. They belonged to one another, not as a conquest, but as a quiet, inevitable return. We at Novell Station spin sagas so wild, even Netflix calls us for spoilers. Laugh, gasp, or question your life choices. It's all part of the subscription-free roller coaster ride. Chapter 2: The Seed of Suspicion. From the very beginning, Leo had lingered at the edges of their story. He was a friend from Ethan's college days, a familiar face in their circle, always present with an easy smile and a perfectly timed joke. In those early days at the café, he was the one who would slide into the empty chair at their table, his charm like a friendly draft. "Well, look at you too," he'd say, his voice a warm, teasing baritone. "Taking up the best table in the house again. Don't mind me, I just crave the ambient happiness." Isabella had found him amusing at first. Ethan considered him a brother. But as the months passed and Ethan and Isabella's bond deepened into something quiet and unshakable, Leo's smiles began to feel fixed. His laughter took a half-beat too long to arrive. He watched them, always from just outside the glowing circle of their intimacy. The jealousy was a quiet, cold seed. It grew each time Isabella's entire face lit up for Ethan and only Ethan. It sharpened when he saw the way she'd unconsciously reach for Ethan's hand during a lull in conversation, a silent check-in that needed no words. He had wanted her first, in a casual, confident way, assuming she would eventually be another conquest. But she had looked right through his charm and seen only Ethan. That rejection, subtle and total, festered. One rainy afternoon, finding himself alone with Isabella as Ethan was delayed, he made his move. It was soft, insidious. "You know, it's funny," Leo said, stirring his coffee slowly. "I always thought Ethan was a confirmed lone wolf. It's amazing how people can surprise you." Isabella glanced up from her book. "What do you mean?" "Oh, nothing," he said, waving a dismissive hand, his eyes full of false warmth. "Just that he's changed since meeting you. In the best way, of course. He's just more private, I guess. Keeps his cards closer to his chest, even with his old friends." He let the implication hang, a ghost of concern in his tone. "But that's love, right? It makes its own little world." The comment was designed to feel like an observation, not an attack. But its purpose was singular, to plant the idea that Ethan's world was now a place she might not fully see, a place where things, and perhaps people, could be hidden. Later, watching them from across the street as they shared an umbrella, Isabella laughing at something Ethan whispered, the seed of jealousy cracked open. It wasn't just desire for Isabella anymore. It was a bitter, burning need to dismantle what they had, to prove that their love was not some unbreakable thing, but a fragile construct. He didn't just want to win her. He wanted to conquer the very idea of them. If he could not be the one she loved, he would become the reason she learned not to trust it. He would insert himself into the foundation of their relationship and quietly, carefully, make it crumble. And from the rubble, he would offer her his hand. Leo clinked his glass against Isabella's, his tone light. I'm telling you, that new art house film is right up your alley. Far more your speed than Ethan's, anyway. He laughed, nudging Ethan. No offense, man, but I've seen your Netflix queue. It's all documentaries about concrete. Ethan smiled easily. Concrete is fascinating. It built the modern world. But yeah, I'll probably pass on the subtitles. You two should go. Isabella's gaze drifted to the door Jenna had just exited. Maybe. She seems nice. Ethan followed her gaze, oblivious. Oh, Jenna? Yeah, she's great. Really saved my skin on the Thompson project last week. She's got this incredible eye for detail. I just don't. Leo leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur aimed at Isabella. Yeah, I've noticed they've been working pretty closely lately. Burning the midnight oil, you know? I saw them leaving together almost every night this week. Look, I probably shouldn't say anything. Isabella's posture stiffened slightly. No, say it. What? Leo sighed, feigning reluctance. It's nothing, I'm sure. It's just, Ethan's been a little hard to pin down, hasn't he? Last Thursday, when he said he was working late, I happened to be meeting a client at the Oak Room, and I swear I saw him and Jenna at a corner table. Looked pretty cozy, but hey, it could have been a work dinner. I don't want to make something out of nothing. The tension between them had been building for weeks, a slow leak in something that once felt airtight. It came to a head one evening at Isabella's apartment. The cozy space felt all wrong, the air stiff and cold. Isabella hugged her arms around herself, not looking at Ethan. Her voice was quiet, strained. I just need you to be straight with me. Is there something going on with Jenna? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture of frustration that now felt like an accusation. Isabella, no. How many times? She's a colleague. A friend. That's it. What is this really about? It's about the little things that don't add up, she said, her words finally spilling out. The working late nights that Leo saw you out. The way her name comes up in every other conversation. The fact that she seems to know about your day before I do. Leo, Ethan repeated, his voice rising in disbelief. You're listening to Leo about us? Since when does he know anything about our relationship? Just then, Isabella's phone chimed with a bright, intrusive sound. An Instagram notification. Her face paled as she stared at the screen. It was a post from Jenna. A picture of a delicate, expensive-looking silver bracelet, shimmering against a dark background. The caption read, "Sometimes, the right person just gets you. Thank you for knowing my heart. Hashtag lucky hashtag, right place hashtag, right time." Her hand trembled as she turned the screen toward him. Did you get her? Ethan, is this the right person? Her voice broke. That's the bracelet from the boutique I showed you last month. The one I pointed to and said was my dream bracelet. Ethan stared at the phone, his face a mask of utter shock. Isabella, I have no idea where she got that. I didn't buy that for her. I'm saving to get it for your birthday. You have to believe me. Before he could say more, the speakerphone on Isabella's phone crackled to life. Leo's voice filled the room, calm and reasonable. I say just breathe. I'm on my way over, okay? We'll sort this out. His tone shifted, turning firm and paternal. Ethan, man, just be honest with her. If something's happening, just admit it. This lying is what's hurting her. I'm not lying. Ethan's voice cracked, his eyes darting from the phone to Isabella's tear-filled eyes. Leo, why are you even? He stopped, seeing the wall of belief solidifying behind Isabella's gaze. The realization hit him like a physical blow. You believe him, he whispered, the fight draining out of him. You actually believe him over me. Isabella's reply was a hollow whisper, the culmination of a month of poisoned doubts. I don't know what to believe anymore. A firm knock sounded at the door. Leo let himself in, arriving with swift, rehearsed timing. He stepped smoothly between them, the image of a concerned peacemaker. Okay, everyone just calm down, he said, his voice a practice bomb. He looked at Ethan with what appeared to be sympathetic regret. Ethan, maybe you should go. Let her have some space. This is a lot. He then turned, placing a protective arm around Isabella's shoulders, subtly pulling her away from Ethan. I'll stay with her. Ethan looked from Leo's calculated concern to Isabella's averted face. The horrible, perfect machinery of it all became clear. His voice was low and cold. This is what you wanted, isn't it, Leo? To be the hero, even if you have to be the villain first. But his words landed on deaf ears. He was already the outsider in the room, the antagonist in a story Leo had written. As Ethan walked out into the indifferent night, Leo gently closed the door behind him. The soft click of the latch was the final note. For a moment, alone in the hallway, the faintest hint of a smile touched Leo's lips. Then, he smoothed his expression back into one of grave sympathy and turned back to Isabella. The wedge was no longer a thin splinter, it was a chasm, and Leo stood firmly on one side, having carefully, deliberately pushed her to the other. This is Novella Station, the channel where suspense is currency and love is the language. The story ahead will test your nerves and your trust. Chapter 3, Reconnect. The air in the café was thick and still, heavy with the ghost of all their past laughter. Ethan and Isabella sat across from each other at their usual table, but nothing was usual anymore. A cold, wide chasm lay between them on the scarred wooden surface. Isabella spoke first, her voice hollow, all the warmth drained away. I got the job, the one in Portland. I leave at the end of the week. Ethan stared into his untouched coffee, his shoulders slumped. Portland? That's far. I'm happy for you. I am. Are you? She asked, the question brittle. After everything? He finally looked up, his eyes raw with a confusion that had long since curdled into despair. After everything what, Isabella? I still don't understand what everything is. You stopped talking to me. You believed a series of coincidences and whispers over 2 years of us. I didn't believe anything, she snapped, her composure cracking to reveal the sheer exhaustion beneath. I can't breathe here anymore. Every corner of this city has your shadow in it. Every coffee shop, every park bench. I can't look at you without feeling that ache, that doubt. I just needed to stop. Before Ethan could respond, the bell above the door jingled. Leo approached their table, his expression a perfect portrait of somber concern. I saw you both through the window, he said, his voice soft. I hate seeing you like this. Ethan's jaw tightened. We're having a private conversation, Leo. I know, Leo said, holding up his hands but not leaving. He turned his gaze to Isabella, his eyes wide with a sympathy that felt suffocating. Portland, huh? That a fresh start. A clean slate. You deserve that. ISA. You deserve to be somewhere that doesn't hurt. His words, meant to be soothing, felt like salt in a wound she just wanted to forget. Isabella looked at him, and a vague, formless suspicion flickered, a sense that his presence here was another thread in the tangled knot of her pain. But her heartache was too total a blinding fog. She didn't have the strength to untangle motives or assign blame. She just wanted the noise to end. A clean slate, she repeated dully, nodding. That's all I want. Leo saw his opening and leaned in, his voice a low, intimate murmur. You'll have it, and you won't be alone. I've actually been thinking about the West Coast myself. I could visit, help you get settled. The offer hung in the air, and for Ethan, it was the final, sickening piece of the puzzle clicking into place. His voice was a low growl. That's your play, isn't it? Clear the board so you can sweep in. But Isabella was no longer listening to their conflict. Their voices were just more of the noise she needed to escape. She stood up, the legs of her chair scraping against the floor with a sound of finality. She looked at Ethan, and the love was still there, but it was a distant, wounded thing buried under an avalanche of fatigue. It doesn't matter anymore, she said, her words not cold, but utterly spent. None of it does. I'm not leaving because of a scheme, Ethan. And I'm not leaving for you, Leo. She looked between the two of them, the best friend and the boyfriend, now both just sources of the same deep, unending hurt. I'm leaving for me. I'm going somewhere with no memories. No shadows. No reminders of either of you. She pulled on her coat, a simple, decisive motion. Goodbye, Ethan. She turned to go, then paused, her eyes meeting Leo's. There was no anger in her gaze, only a vast, empty resolution. Don't follow me, Leo. Don't call. Just let me be gone. And then she was. The door closed behind her with a soft sigh, leaving a silence more profound than any argument. Leo stood frozen, his planned consolation now useless, his path to her definitively blocked. He had broken them, but in doing so, he had not won her. He had merely made himself a part of the pain she was fleeing. Ethan finally rose, looking at the man he once called a friend with a disgust so deep it had no words. He left without speaking, leaving Leo alone in the empty café, the architect of a ruin he was now condemned to stand in, utterly alone. Isabella sat at her desk in Solstice Group's HR department, flipping through the stack of resumes for the week's new hires. Her eyes froze when she reached the next file. Ethan Carter, Strategy and Risk Management. Her breath caught. For a moment, the office around her blurred into silence. 3 years had passed since Portland, since the cafe, since she had walked away from everything. And now, fate had placed his name in her hands. She pressed her palms against the desk, steadying herself. Professional. She had to be professional. When the time came, she walked into the conference room with the onboarding folder clutched tightly, her pulse hammering in her ears. Ethan was already there, standing tall in a tailored suit, the polished veneer of a man who had rebuilt himself. For a fleeting second, his eyes widened, shock, recognition, but then it was gone, replaced by a cool, composed mask. The air in the conference room was cool, sterile, the hum of the ventilation system the only sound. Isabella stood by the door, her knuckles white around the edge of the onboarding folder. Ethan Carter sat at the long table, his profile sharp against the city skyline, framed by the window. For 3 years, he had been a ghost. Now, he was painfully, impossibly real. "Good morning," he said, turning. His voice was even, polished smooth by time and distance. "Miss Vance." The formality was a glacial wall. Isabella forced her feet to move, setting the folder down with a soft thud that seemed too loud. "Mr. Carter, welcome to Solstice Group. I'll be handling your onboarding." A silence stretched, thin and brittle. His eyes, the exact same shade of warm brown she'd once traced with her fingertip, held no warmth now. They were assessing, remote. Or, he began, a faint, wry twist to his mouth. "Should I be saying Mrs. Vance? I wouldn't want to get the title wrong. Must be important, getting the details right on the paperwork." The sarcasm was a scalpel, precise and cold. It sliced through the sterile room and found the old, buried wound. The details. He was taunting her, hiding his own pain behind the barb. She remembered another table, a wooden one stained with coffee rings. They were patterns, she'd said. The late nights. Jenna. The bracelet. He'd looked at her then, with the same raw confusion he now masked with this icy control. She swallowed. The ghost of that past ached, tightening her throat. "Miss Vance is fine," she managed, her voice quieter than she intended. She flipped open the folder, the pages a blur. "We'll start with the non-disclosure agreement. Standard for all strategic hires." "Of course," he said, leaning back slightly. The motion was so familiar. The way he'd leaned back in that cafe chair, stretching his arms behind his head after making her laugh, that her breath hitched. Wouldn't want any confidential information getting into the wrong hands. We've all seen how damaging misunderstandings can be. Another direct hit. Misunderstandings. The word hung between them, charged with the memory of shattered trust. She saw, for a flash, his face in the rain under a green umbrella, smiling, truly smiling. "Just glad I was in the right place at the right time." The contrast to the man before her now was a physical pain. "The policy is quite clear," she said, pushing the document toward him, her tone deliberately flat. "It protects all parties." He took the pen she offered, his fingers brushing hers for a millisecond. A spark, a jolt of memory, his hand closing over hers on a wooden spoon in a flour-dusted kitchen. "Dancing with you," he'd said, his breath warm against her hair. She snatched her hand back as if burned. Ethan's mask didn't slip, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He scrawled his signature, the pen digging into the paper. All protected, he murmured, more to himself than to her. She guided him through the rest: benefits, building access, IT protocols. His questions were clipped, intelligent, devoid of any personal inflection. He was the perfect new hire. And with every polite, detached query, the chasm between them deepened. This was the man who'd once whispered secrets into her hair in the dark, who'd known her favorite song before she'd even named it. Now, he was asking about firewall protocols and dental plan deductibles. When the final document was signed, she stacked the papers neatly, a feeble attempt to restore order. That concludes the formal orientation. Your team lead will meet you at 10. He stood, straightening his suit jacket, a figure of complete professional composure. Thank you, Miss Vance. Efficient as always. It was the final twist of the knife. Efficient, reducing the cataclysm of their past to a brisk, satisfactory transaction. He was almost at the door when he paused, his back to her. The practiced poise seemed to waver for just a second, his shoulders tense beneath the fine wool. He didn't turn, but his voice, when it came, lost its sharp edge, leaving only a weary, hollowed-out truth. Portland must not have been far enough. Then he was gone, the door sighing shut behind him. Isabella sank into the chair he'd just vacated, the professional facade crumbling. The ghost hadn't just found her. One of them had just walked in, signed his name, and calmly taken up space in her present, his taunts a thin veil for a pain that mirrored her own. The running was over. Now, they would have to find a way to exist in the same world, haunted by the same unspoken past. The hallway outside the conference room was a tunnel of cold, polished glass and steel. Ethan walked, his stride measured and even, until he reached a deserted alcove near a window overlooking the city. Only then did he let his shoulders slump, bracing one hand against the cool glass. Seeing her had been a physical blow, a sucker punch to a wound that had never truly healed. For 3 years, Isabella Vance had been a ghost he'd tried to bury, a phantom of soft laughter, of flower-dusted constellations on his shirt, of a trust that had turned to ash. And now she was here, in a sleek suit, with a professional smile that didn't reach her eyes, calling him Mr. Carter. The rage was the first thing that rose, a black, boiling tide. It wasn't just at her. It was at the universe, at this cruel, ironic job placement, at the memory of Leo's smug, pitying face in that café. He had wanted to scream, to walk back into that room, slam his hands on that sterile table, and demand, how could you believe him over me? After everything, he could still see her face, pale and drawn, as she'd whispered, I don't know what to believe anymore. The memory was a fresh laceration. But he had not screamed. He had not begged. He had used the only weapon he had left, cold control. The sarcasm had been a shield, forged in the fire of that heartbreak. Or should I be saying Mrs. Vance? The question was a barb meant to sting, to see if she'd flinch, to disguise the way his own heart had clenched at the thought of her belonging to someone else. Wouldn't want any confidential information getting into the wrong hands. Every clipped, taunting word was a layer of armor over the raw, screaming pain of her disbelief. He replayed the meeting in his mind. Her trembling hands, the way she couldn't quite meet his eyes, the fleeting brush of fingers that had sent a traitorous current through him, immediately followed by the ice of her recoil. Good. Let her be ice. Let her be professional. It was safer that way. As his breathing steadied, the rage condensed into a new, harder resolve. This was the final lesson she and Leo had taught him. To love was to hand someone a weapon and turn your back, hoping they wouldn't use it. He had done that. He had given Isabella his whole, unguarded heart, and she had handed it to Leo to be picked apart with insinuations and lies. Never again. The vow solidified in his chest, colder and harder than the glass beneath his palm. He would be impeccable at this job. He would be civil, even cordial, with Miss Vance. But he would never be at her mercy again. He would never give anyone that power, the power to dismantle him, the power to make him question his own reality, the power to leave him standing alone in the ruins of a life they'd built together. He pushed off from the window, straightening his suit jacket, smoothing his expression back into the unreadable mask of the new strategy hire. The man who had loved Isabella, who had danced with her in a messy kitchen, was a casualty of the past. The man walking back onto the Solstice Group floor was someone else. Someone armored. Someone who understood that the only way to win was to never again risk what you couldn't afford to lose. He had survived the first encounter. He had not gone ballistic. He had used sarcasm as a scalpel and kept his heart locked away. It was a hollow victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The war, it seemed, was just beginning, but this time he would not be fighting for love. He would be fighting for sovereignty. Within a month, Ethan Carter had become a name on everyone's lips at Solstice Group. His sharp insights in risk management impressed the executives, his calm authority earned respect from colleagues, and his polished charisma drew a quiet wave of admiration, especially from the junior staff. Isabella watched from the periphery, her chest tightening each time his name was praised in a meeting. She had once known that smile, that confident ease, when it was hers alone. Now it was armor, and she was firmly on the outside. The hum of the coffee machine filled the mid-morning break room as Isabella stepped in, clutching her empty mug. Ethan was already there, leaning casually against the counter, surrounded by two junior analysts from the finance wing. Their laughter was bright and a little too eager. "Morning, Claire." "Morning, Nina." Ethan greeted, his voice warm, rich with a charm that seemed effortless. He handed Claire the sugar container, his gesture easy and generous. "Thanks, Ethan. You're a lifesaver," Claire said, her cheeks flushing slightly. "Just facilitating caffeine efficiency," he replied with a modest shrug and a smile that made them both laugh again. Isabella moved quietly to the machine, waiting her turn. Ethan's gaze flicked to her for the briefest second, a cool, impersonal glance, then slid away as if she were a piece of the furniture. "Miss Vance," he said flatly, the two words devoid of all the warmth he'd just lavished on the others. He immediately turned his attention back to Nina. "So, how's that portfolio analysis coming along? I heard you absolutely nailed the presentation yesterday. Confident, precise. Exactly what this division needs." The young woman beamed under his focused praise. "Really? I wasn't sure about the volatility projections." "You trusted your data." Ethan cut in, his tone encouraging. "That's the foundation. Never doubt a well-built foundation." Isabella stood stiffly, listening as her mug filled, the cheerful drip of coffee a stark contrast to the chill settling in her bones. The sound of their easy camaraderie, of his mentorship, cut sharper than any direct insult. He was treating her like air, acknowledged only as a bureaucratic formality, a ghost in his new, successful world. Later, in the bustling cafeteria, the indirect blows became more pointed. Trays clattered, colleagues laughed in clusters. Ethan held court at a central table, surrounded by an attentive group. Isabella passed by, her own lunch tray in hand, her path unavoidably close to his orbit. His voice, carrying just enough, reached her ears. He leaned back in his chair, the picture of relaxed authority, his words pitched as philosophical musing. "You know, I've been thinking about risk in interpersonal dynamics. It's fascinating, really, how easily people will trust a charming third party, a mutual friend, say, over someone they claim to have loved. One planted whisper, one artfully twisted half-truth, and suddenly years of demonstrated loyalty mean absolutely nothing. Poof! Trust, the most critical asset, vaporizes based on faulty intelligence." The table nodded, a few chuckling at his clever analogy, seeing it as another sharp insight from the Rising Star strategy. To them, it was intellectual banter. To Isabella, it was a surgical blade slipped neatly between her ribs. He was dissecting their past in public and dressing the wound as a professional lesson. She froze for a moment, her tray trembling slightly in her hands, before forcing her feet to carry her to a distant, empty corner. Ethan never looked at her directly. He didn't have to. The faint, unforgiving smirk that briefly touched his lips before he took a sip of water told her everything. He knew exactly where his words had landed. Each polite, public interaction was a stone added to the wall he was building between them, a wall mortared with sarcasm and cold professionalism, designed to keep her out and his own long-buried pain securely locked away. Breaking the fourth wall, just to say, novella station is cheaper than therapy, tastier than popcorn, and way more fun. Chapter 4. At first, the change in her was just a detail at the edge of his vision. A blouse that was perfectly pressed one day, slightly rumpled the next. Then, the dark circles under her eyes, not well concealed by makeup. He told himself he didn't care. Her disarray was none of his concern. She had chosen her path, and he had chosen his, one of impeccable control. But then she was missing. A day, then two. Her empty desk in HR became a silent, glaring accusation. He found his eyes drifting toward it during meetings in the glass-walled conference room. A strange, unwelcome tightness took root in his chest. He masked his concern with casual, professional inquiry. Leaning against the doorframe of the break room one afternoon, coffee in hand, he addressed a few colleagues from HR who usually sat near Isabella. "Quiet around here, without Vance around," he said, his tone implying mild administrative curiosity. "Everything all right? Hope we're not overworking our onboarding specialists." One of them, a woman named Sarah, sighed, her face softening with genuine worry. "Oh, it's terrible, Ethan. It's not work. It's her brother." Ethan kept his expression neutral, taking a slow sip of his coffee. "Brother?" "Yeah, her younger brother, James. He was in a really bad car accident last week. A hit and run. He's in the ICU at Mercy General." Another colleague, Mark, chimed in, shaking his head. "And that's on top of everything else. Did you know she lost both her parents 2 years ago, early in the pandemic? It was just her and her brother after that. And now this." Sarah nodded, her voice dropping. "The doctors say he needs this crazy expensive spinal procedure, or he'll be paralyzed. The cost is astronomical. I heard her on the phone with the billing department yesterday. She sounded completely shattered. She's probably selling everything she owns." The words landed in the pit of Ethan's stomach with a cold, heavy finality. The rage that had sustained Ethan for a month had finally curdled into a strange, hollow stillness. Seeing Isabella's gradual unraveling at work, the rumpled blouses, the shadows under her eyes so deep they looked like bruises, and then her absence had scraped at something beneath his armor. He'd told himself it was none of his business, that she had made her choice, and her suffering was not his to witness, nor his to relieve. But a day passed, then another, and the image of her, proud and broken, wouldn't leave him. The cold victory of his professional success turned to ash in his mouth. He found himself driving to the hospital with a tension in his jaw, his hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Just to see, he told himself, to confirm it's real, to finally cauterize whatever this is. He saw her through the glass window of the room first. Isabella was slumped in a chair, her head resting on the edge of a hospital bed, one hand clutching the limp hand of a young man lying still amidst a tangle of wires and monitors. She looked smaller, hollowed out. The vibrant woman he'd known was gone, replaced by a shell of exhaustion and despair. He noticed then the simple gold necklace she always wore, the one with the tiny star pendant her mother had given her, was gone. The small diamond studs in her ears, missing. A pain, sharp and wholly unexpected, lanced through his chest, so visceral it stole his breath. This wasn't the familiar, burning anger. This was something older, more profound, a reflex of protection he thought he'd extinguished. He turned away, seeking out the attending physician. His voice was low, all business. "The young man in room 412. James Vance. What's his prognosis?" The doctor, weary but thorough, explained the complex spinal injury, the urgent need for a specialized procedure. Without it, the doctor said gently, he'll never walk again. The window is closing. And the cost? The procedure, with rehabilitation, is $250,000. We've discussed payment plans, but Ethan didn't hear the rest. $250,000. He saw the missing jewelry. He saw her collapsed form. He saw the ghost of the girl who'd once debated the semantics of love over coffee, now being crushed by an impossible weight. The vow he'd made, never again, never be at anyone's mercy, echoed in his mind, but it sounded empty, childish in the face of this sheer, devastating need. I want to cover it, he heard himself say, his voice strangely calm. The doctor blinked. Mister, it doesn't matter. I'll need a day to liquidate some assets. But I can have $150,000 deposited into the hospital's account by this afternoon. The rest will follow within 24 hours. This is incredibly generous. The family will want to thank. No, Ethan cut in, his tone leaving no room for argument. My one condition is complete anonymity. You do not disclose this to the patient or his sister. To anyone. Is that clear? The doctor, stunned, nodded. Of course. Of course. We can structure it as an anonymous donor grant. Ethan gave the necessary instructions. His movements precise, his mind detached. He was operating on a strange, new autopilot. He wasn't doing this for her. He insisted to the cold, logical part of his brain. He was doing it because it was right. Because no one, not even her, should have to lose everything. As he finalized the details with the hospital administrator, a nurse down the hall, moved by the sight of a well-dressed stranger arranging a life-changing sum with quiet, unassuming urgency, discreetly raised her phone. She wasn't seeking to blackmail. Her heart was simply too full seeing a light in the institutional gloom. She recorded a few seconds, just the back of his suited figure, his lowered head as he confirmed the wire transfer details, to post later. A small testament, she thought, that angels still walked in plain clothes. Ethan left the hospital without glancing toward room 412 again. The weight in his chest hadn't lifted, but it had changed. The icy, controlled rage was gone. In its place was a vast, complicated silence, and the unsettling knowledge that some vows, even those made in the deepest pain, could be broken by a simple, undeniable truth. He could not stand by and watch her break, even if she never knew. The hospital waiting room was dim, the fluorescent lights buzzing a faint, mournful note overhead. Isabella sat hunched in a plastic chair, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were bone white. Her blouse was wrinkled from days of wear, her hair pulled back in a careless knot, her eyes ringed with shadows so deep they looked like bruises. A raw, broken whisper escaped her lips, meant for no one but the oppressive quiet. Maybe I'm cursed. A jinx. Everyone I love gone. My parents, and now James. She swallowed hard, a fresh wave of agony tightening her throat. And me? I denied a true heart once. I chose to believe a lie over everything we were. Maybe this is my punishment. This is what I deserve. Her gaze drifted to her worn bag on the floor beside her. With trembling fingers, she pulled out a sheaf of insurance papers. She unfolded them, her eyes glazing over as they focused on a single line. Her voice dropped to a choked, almost inaudible rasp. If I end this, if I'm gone, the policy pays out. It would be enough. He'd have a chance. My life for his. Her breath hitched, silent tears spilling over and tracing paths through the dust of her despair. She pressed her forehead against her knees, the horrific, logical thought circling her mind like a vulture. Then, faintly, she heard it. Whispers in the hallway, cutting through her isolation. Two nurses passed by the open doorway, their voices hushed but urgent. The first nurse said, "Did you hear? Room 412. The Vance boy. Someone covered the entire cost. All of it." The second nurse replied, her voice full of awe. "An anonymous donor. $250,000. Just like that. It's a miracle, is what it is." Isabella's head snapped up. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic, hopeful drumbeat. "What?" She breathed out, the word barely audible. She rose unsteadily to her feet, her legs trembling beneath her. Before she could take a step, a clerk appeared at the doorway. "Miss Vance? Dr. Norton would like to see you in the administrator's office. Run away." The office smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paper. Dr. Norton sat behind a wide desk, his expression kind but professionally reserved. Isabella perched on the very edge of the chair across from him, her body rigid, braced for another blow. "Miss Vance," Dr. Norton began, his tone deliberately gentle. "I know you've been under immense strain. I have news. I want you to know your brother's surgery is fully funded. The entire procedure and his rehabilitation. An anonymous donor has covered all costs. The specialists are already being scheduled." Isabella's breath caught in her chest, sharp and painful. Her voice, when it came, was fractured. "Anonymous? You mean someone just gave that money? All of it?" "Yes," Norton said, nodding slowly. "They were very clear. They insisted on no recognition, no conditions. But you should know, the funds are secure and irrevocable. James will get the care he needs." Her composure, held together by the thinnest thread of desperation, shattered. A sob tore from her throat as she pressed trembling hands to her lips. Relief, vast and overwhelming, surged through her like a tidal wave, drowning the black despair that had consumed her just minutes before. "Who?" she whispered through her tears, almost to herself. "Who would do this? Why?" Norton's voice softened further. "Sometimes, Miss Vance, people just choose to help. They see a need, and they act. Try not to question the grace. Just let it help your brother heal." Later that evening, exhausted but lighter than she had felt in weeks, Isabella sat in the same waiting room, her phone clutched loosely in her hand. She scrolled absently through social media, a mindless attempt to quiet her racing thoughts. Then, a video on a local community page caught her eye. It was grainy, discreetly filmed from a distance. A suited man, his head bowed slightly, was speaking quietly with a hospital administrator at a desk. The caption read, "Proof that angels still walk among us. Caught this moment today. An anonymous donor just saved a young man's future. Faith in humanity equals restored." Her heart stuttered to a stop. The figure was turned away, but the posture was unmistakable. The set of his shoulders, the cut of the suit, the way he held himself with that quiet, contained authority. "Ethan," her breath caught, her chest tightening with a storm of emotions. A crushing wave of gratitude, a whirlwind of confusion, a deep, piercing guilt, and beneath it all, an ache of recognition for the man she thought she'd lost forever. She closed the phone quickly, as if burned, her hands trembling. If it was him, and in her soul, she knew it was, he hadn't wanted her to know. He had given this monumental gift and hidden himself behind a wall of silence. And yet now she did know. A week later, Isabella returned to Solstice Group. The crushing weight was gone from her shoulders, replaced by a fragile, tentative hope. Her brother's surgery had been a success. The doctors said he would walk again. He would need months of therapy, and his life would be quieter. No heavy lifting, no contact sports, but he would live. He would have a future. The miracle, paid for in secret, had held. In the quiet hours by James's bedside, her mind had constantly drifted to Ethan. The urge to find him, to fall to her knees in gratitude, had been a physical pull. But she knew him. She remembered the man in the café 3 years ago, his raw eyes begging her to see the truth. She remembered the man in the break room, his sarcasm a polished shield. If she approached him now with tearful thanks, he would retreat behind that wall completely. He would dismiss it as obligation, as pity, as a debt she felt compelled to acknowledge. It would only widen the chasm. Instead, she replayed every harsh word, every cold glance he'd given her since his arrival. The taunts in the cafeteria, one whisper, one half-truth, and suddenly years of loyalty mean nothing. She had heard cruelty then. Now, she heard the echo of a specific, profound betrayal. It wasn't random philosophy. It was his pain, given a cutting edge. She thought of his meteoric rise at the company, the admiring glances he effortlessly drew yet never seemed to notice. He was alone. In 3 years, he had built everything except a life with someone in it. The realization was a quiet earthquake. He had not moved on. His success was not a replacement for what they'd lost. It was a monument to it. And she had been the same. In Portland, in this city, she had merely existed. She had never let anyone else in, had never even tried. She had told herself she was focused, independent, healing. But the truth was simpler and more devastating. Her heart had never left that rainy doorstep or that flour-dusted kitchen. She had just been too proud and too hurt to call it back. Now, walking through the familiar glass doors of Solstice, the office air cool and smelling of coffee and toner, she felt different. The ghost of her parents, the specter of her brother's tragedy, the choking guilt over Ethan, they were all still there. But the desperate, drowning panic was gone. In its place was a clear, sharp resolve. She had been given a second chance she did not deserve, a grace she could never repay. But perhaps she could try to earn it. She took her seat at her desk, the surface neatly ordered. She didn't look toward the strategy wing. Not yet. She simply began her work, the rhythm of the keys a steady, grounding sound. The path forward was terrifyingly unclear, shrouded in 3 years of silence and hurt. But for the first time since she'd walked out of that cafe, she was no longer running away. She was here, and so was he. The next move would require not a grand gesture of thanks, but a courage far greater, the courage to truly see him again and to let herself be seen. Pause the drama, folks. Quick reminder, Novella Station is your one-stop shop for binge-worthy nonsense. Chapter 5. The polished glass doors of Solstice Group sighed, shut behind Ethan Carter. His mind was a razor, focused on the morning's priorities, the quarterly risk assessment, the 10 o'clock meeting with the board subcommittee. He moved with the efficient grace that had become his trademark, a man in complete command of his environment. Then he saw her. Isabella. The world did not so much stop as it inverted. The low hum of keyboards, the soft shuffle of papers, the muted morning greetings from colleagues, all of it drained away into a ringing silence. His gaze, sharp and assessing a moment before, locked onto her across the open-plan floor. She was at her desk in HR, turning a page in a file. And just like that, he was unmoored. He was not in Solstice's gleaming headquarters. He was in a crowded cafe, watching her tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, her laughter a soft, private sound just for him. He was in a tiny, book-crammed kitchen, flour dusting her nose as she scowled at a recipe. He was in a hospital corridor, seeing the devastating slump of her shoulders, the terrible absence of the jewelry she'd loved. He was on a rainy street, watching her walk away until she vanished, taking every color with her. Every memory, every carved and cherished scar, ignited at once. Isabella looked up. She felt the weight of his stare like a physical touch. Her eyes found his, and the collision was immediate and total. Past and present folded into one searing, unbearable point of contact. In his gaze, she didn't just see the impeccable strategist, the rising star of Solstice. She saw the boy with the umbrella, his smile hesitant and warm. She saw the man in the cafe, his eyes hollow with a betrayal he couldn't name. She saw the anonymous angel in a hospital hallway, his back turned, giving everything and asking for nothing. Ethan's chest tightened, a vice of pure feeling. He hadn't meant to stare. The mask, the one of cool indifference, of polished sarcasm, was supposed to be permanent. But there she was, and the reverie pulled him under with the force of a riptide. The phantom sensation of her head on his chest as they danced. The devastating chill of her final, whispered doubt. The years of silence that had screamed louder than any argument. He forced himself to blink, to draw a breath that felt like shards in his lungs. He straightened his shoulders, the fine wool of his suit pulling taut. Professional, controlled. With a deliberate, almost mechanical turn of his head, he broke the gaze. He nodded to a passing group from analytics, his expression rearranging into one of detached acknowledgement. The moment, to any outside observer, was nothing. A glance, a pause. But inside him, the truth was a quake, reshaping the bedrock of his carefully constructed world. Isabella Vance was no longer a ghost to be managed, a pain to be compartmentalized. She was here, flesh and presence and history, sitting 50 feet away. The past he had buried with vows and sarcasm and staggering generosity had not stayed buried. It had just walked, calm and steady, back into the heart of his present. And he had no strategy for this. This dramatic pause brought to you by Novella Station. We spin sagas, you spin your chair laughing. Chapter 6. The Solstice Group Annual Retreat. A rustic lodge in the mountains. An optional team-building mixer is in full, slightly awkward swing in a wood-beam hall. A cheesy DJ is playing generic pop. Ethan stood near the back, a glass of seltzer in hand, a monument to polite detachment. He'd spent the day in strategy sessions, the perfect participant. Now, he was calculating the minimum socially acceptable minutes before he could slip away to his cabin. Isabella was across the room, talking with Sarah from HR. She'd been aware of him all evening, a constant, quiet pull on her senses. The shared umbrella moment a week ago had been a seismic shift, but since then, they'd retreated into careful, painful politeness at the office. It was as if they'd touched a live wire and were now afraid to move. The DJ's voice crackled over the speakers. All right, Solstice. Let's mix it up. We're going old school. I need 2 volunteers for a little partner demonstration. A classic. Don't be shy. A few people chuckled nervously. No one stepped forward. The DJ shrugged, scanning the crowd. His eyes landed on Ethan, the tall, composed figure by the wall. You, sir. You look like you know your way around a dance floor. Come on up. Ethan froze, a deer in the very civilized headlights of corporate entertainment. Oh no, and we need a partner. The DJ's gaze swung. How about you? The lovely lady in the green dress. Isabella's heart plummeted into her stomach. All eyes turned to her. Sarah gave her a gentle, encouraging push. Go on, ISA. Trapped, Isabella moved forward on legs that felt like wood. Ethan, seeing her approach, had no graceful exit. He set his glass down with a soft clink and walked to the center of the cleared space, his expression unreadable. The DJ beamed. Perfect. Now, for our classic, let's set the mood. He queued up a song. The first, gentle piano notes filtered through the speakers. Then, the slow, soulful sweep of a familiar violin. Isabella's breath caught. It was their song. The one from the record player in her tiny apartment. The one they danced to between the stove and the refrigerator. A Case of You by Joni Mitchell. The world narrowed to the opening line. Just before our love got lost, you said. Ethan's composure shattered. His eyes, wide and startled, flew to hers. The polished strategist vanished, replaced by the man who had whispered the lyrics into her hair. The memory was a physical blow. Flower on his shirt, her laugh against his chest, the unspoken vow in that simple sway. The DJ, oblivious, chirped, All right, just a simple box step. Face your partner, gentleman's right hand on her back. Mechanically, Ethan raised his arms. Isabella moved into the frame, her hand settling lightly on his shoulder. His other hand found her waist. The touch, through the fabric of her dress, sent a current through them both. It was the first time they had touched since the hospital hallway, since before the end of everything. The DJ's instructions faded into a hum. The crowd of colleagues blurred. There was only the music, the devastating, familiar music, and the inches between their faces. He didn't do the box step. He simply began to sway, a slow, mournful rhythm that matched the song's aching beauty. She followed without thought, their bodies remembering a language their minds had tried to forget. Isabella, he breathed her name, the word of confession ripped from him by the song. You remember, she whispered, her eyes glistening. Every note. His voice was thick. His thumb moved, a tiny, unconscious stroke against the silk at her waist. I couldn't listen to it. For years. Neither could I. Isabella. Her name was a ragged breath, torn from him by the song. It wasn't a confession. It was a surrender to the memory, an acknowledgement of the ghost between them. The sound of it, her name in his voice, without miss, without ice, electrified her. It passed through her like a bolt, shaking loose every repressed feeling. The gratitude, the guilt, the love she had locked away. She wanted to scream it. I know it was you. You saved me. You saved him. I love you. I never stopped. The words pressed against her lips, desperate and terrifying. But she said nothing. She just met his gaze, her own eyes wide and swimming, letting him see the earthquake his single word had caused. They danced. Around them, the polite applause had died into a watchful silence. Colleagues exchanged glances. This wasn't two reluctant volunteers. This was a private universe of pain and memory contained within a simple sway. Sarah from HR watched, her hand over her mouth. A manager from strategy leaned forward, his earlier joviality gone, replaced by dawning understanding. The song wound toward its end. The connection was so palpable it charged the air. As the final notes hung, trembling, Ethan's hold tightened, a fleeting, instinctive grip, before his hands fell away as if her skin had burned him. They sprang apart. The spell broke with an almost audible snap. Ethan took 2 sharp steps back, his face a masterpiece of shock, the vulnerability he'd shown already being bricked over with a visible, almost painful effort. He gave a stiff, shallow nod in her general direction, a politician's empty gesture. "Thank you, our brave volunteers." The DJ boomed into the heavy silence, which was then filled with a sudden, too loud wave of chatter and applause. But the eyes followed them. Ethan turned and was gone, vanishing through a side door into the night. Isabella stood rooted for a second, her skin ablaze where his hands had been, the echo of her name, Isabella, ringing in her ears. She managed a weak, unconvincing smile at Sarah before moving quickly toward the refreshment table, needing to do something, anything, with her trembling hands. The dance was over, but the performance was just beginning. Everyone had seen it. The ghost of their past had just danced in the center of the room, and now it was loose, undeniable, and staring back at them from the curious, knowing eyes of their colleagues. The careful fiction of being mere acquaintances was in ruins. The CEO, Robert Thorne, finished his presentation on the main stage in the lodge's Great Hall. A panoramic slide filled the screen behind him. Solstice Horizon Initiative, strategic expansion and venture partnerships. As we look to the next fiscal year, Thorne's voice boomed, confident and smooth. Our growth will be fueled not just by internal innovation, but by strategic, agile partnerships with external disruptors. We are actively seeking to identify and fund the next wave of market leaders. A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd of employees. Thorne continued, his eyes scanning the room. To lead this critical initiative from our end, we need a mind that excels not only in identifying risk, but in seeing the profound opportunity hidden within it. A mind that has already proven its metric-driven value to this firm in record time. He paused, letting the anticipation build. It is my distinct pleasure to announce the promotion of Ethan Carter to the role of senior partner, effective immediately. In under a year, Ethan has redefined our approach to systemic risk and secured 3 of our most valuable client renewals single-handedly. He is the fastest associate to make this leap in Solstice's history. Polite, impressed applause echoed through the hall. Ethan, seated near the front, gave a curt, humble nod, his expression one of focused gratitude. Isabella, from her seat further back, felt a surge of pride so intense it ached, mingled with a deep, private sorrow. This was the man she doubted. This was the empire he'd built from the ashes. Thorne wasn't finished. And to mark this new chapter for Ethan and for Solstice, we're doing something a little different. Tonight's Investor Connection cocktail party is not just a networking event. It is Ethan's first official function in his new capacity. He will be our chief scout. The proposals you've seen floating around this week, the startups some of you have been informally chatting with, tonight is the night we start separating the true visionaries from the rest. He gestured to Ethan, who stood. The floor is yours, Ethan. This initiative is your mandate. Ethan approached the podium, his posture radiating a calm authority that silenced the room. Thank you, Robert. The Horizon Initiative is about betting on people as much as technology. It's about pattern recognition, seeing the genuine article in a sea of polished presentations. Tonight isn't just a party. It's the first filter. My team, and I will be listening. Be ready. His gaze swept the room, professional and penetrating. It passed over Isabella, a brief, electric contact before moving on. The message was clear. The retreat was over. The business of the future had begun. Later, Isabella found Sarah by the coffee station. Sarah whistled low. Senior partner. In under a year. I didn't even know that was possible. Isabella stirred her coffee, her voice soft. He's always seen things others miss, even when the cost of missing something was very high. Sarah leaned in, lowering her tone. And tonight, he's basically the kingmaker for every startup here. No wonder the energy is so intense. You can practically smell the desperation and ambition. Isabella nodded, the realization settling in. This wasn't just a mixer. It was a proving ground. Ethan wasn't a guest. He was the gatekeeper. And into this arena, where he held supreme professional power, walked the one man who had once held the most intimate power to destroy him. A voice slick and familiar cut through the hum. Ethan Carter. I heard a rumor you'd risen like a phoenix. Or was it more of a calculated ascent? Ethan turned slowly. Time seemed to warp. There stood Leo, his smile the same practiced, charming weapon. Beside him, her arm stiff in his, was Jenna. She looked polished, successful, and utterly miserable. Ethan's voice was flat, devoid of warmth. Leo, I'd say it's a surprise, but little about you surprises me anymore. Leo chuckled, ignoring the venom. You remember Jenna, of course. Jenna's eyes, sharp and regretful, met Ethan's. Ethan, it's been a long time. Her gaze flickered past him, searching. Is Isabella here? I always hoped you two, well, that you worked it out. The question was a grenade. Ethan's jaw tightened. Before he could reply, Isabella appeared at his side, drawn by the tension. She stopped short, her glass halfway to her lips, her face paling at the sight of the two people who had orchestrated the ruin of her life. Her voice was a blade. Leo, his eyes lit with predatory delight. Isabella, you look well, resilient. I see some things never change. Still together, after all these storms? I have to admit, even I didn't think my little interventions would backfire so spectacularly. You must be stronger than I gave you credit for. The bald admission, dressed as a compliment, was meant to disorient. Jenna winced, her composure cracking. Leo, for God's sake, shut up. She turned to Isabella, her voice urgent, low with shame. Isabella, listen to me. I need you to understand. The lunches, the late nights, the bracelet, all of it was him. She jabbed a finger at Leo, her disgust palpable. He fed me information, orchestrated every coincidence. He had me post that damn bracelet photo. I was going through a divorce. I was vulnerable. And he used me. I am so sorry. I tried to find you years ago to explain, but you'd vanished. Isabella trembled, the past rushing back not as memory, but as a live wire. She looked at Ethan, seeing the storm in his eyes. Not at her, but at Leo. Ethan's voice was dangerously quiet. You're here for funding, aren't you? Let me guess. Your little tech venture is floundering, and you heard Solstice had deep pockets. Leo's charm slipped, desperation showing. It's a solid company. Jenna's the brains. I just handle investor relations. Jenna let out a bitter laugh. He handles draining the accounts. He still holds 40%. I can't cut him out. I can't move forward, and now we're here begging because of him. She looked at Ethan and Isabella, her eyes pleading. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I couldn't let you think. I couldn't let the lie stand anymore. Not when I see you together. It's the one decent thing I can do. The fire blazed in Isabella's chest, but when she looked at Ethan, she saw not fire but ice. A glacial, controlled fury. He was in a cage of his own making, watching the architect of his misery stand before him, and doing nothing but clenching his glass. His tone was frigid professional. Submit your proposal through the proper channels. It will be evaluated on its merits. He turned to leave, the ultimate dismissal. But Isabella couldn't move. The gasoline had been poured. The truth, from Jenna's lips, was the match. She saw Ethan retreating into his citadel of control, and something in her snapped. Her voice rang out, sharp and clear. Is that all? Submit a proposal? After what he did? Ethan halted, his back rigid. Leo smirked, sensing the fracture. See, Ethan? Some things do change. Isabella finally found her spine. Pity it's 3 years too late. That was the spark. Ethan turned. The cold fury in his eyes was terrifying. But it wasn't directed at Isabella. It was a focused beam, reserved solely for Leo. He stepped forward, and Leo actually flinched. You will leave. His voice was a decree. You will not speak to her. You will not look at her. If your proposal crosses my desk, I will personally ensure it is shredded. You are a poison, and your business is a corpse. You just haven't lain down yet. His gaze shifted to Jenna, the fury softening slightly. Get a lawyer. There are ways to purge a toxic shareholder. I'll send you a name. Finally, he looked at Isabella. The rage was still there, but beneath it was raw, wild pain. The pain of a man whose cage had just been rattled to its foundations. Without a word, he took her elbow, firm but not rough, and guided her away from the specters of their past. Leo seethed. Jenna wept with relief. Ethan didn't lead Isabella back to the party. He led her outside, into the cold, dark quiet of the mountain night. Only when they were alone did he release her arm, running both hands through his hair, his breath sharp in the frigid air. The cage was still around him, but she had just seen the wild thing inside it roar. This chaos is proudly sponsored by Us. Novella Station, where love meets plot twists. Chapter 7. The cold mountain air bit at them as Ethan released her arm. He paced a few steps away, his breath sharp clouds in the night. The silence between them was unbearable, a chasm filled with the ghosts Leo and Jenna had just unleashed. He turned to face her, but the sarcasm wouldn't come. Instead, his voice was low, stripped raw, each word a shaky recollection of an old, specific agony. Do you remember? He began, his eyes dark pools in the moonlight. That Thursday, I texted you a picture of the concrete foundation analysis I was working on at the office. The one with the weird hairline fracture pattern I thought looked like a constellation. You said it looked like Cygnus, the swan. Isabella stared at him, her breath catching. I was at my desk until 10:46 that night, he continued, the precision heartbreaking. The security log would show it. The janitor, Miguel, brought me coffee at 9. We talked about his daughter's recital. He took a step closer, his voice tightening. Leo told you he saw me at the Oak Room, but I have the receipt from the Thai place that delivers to the office. Drunken noodles, extra basil. Paid at 9:20. I could have shown you. I wanted to show you, but you stopped asking for proof. You just accepted his word. His composure was fracturing, not into anger, but into the desperate, bewildered pain of a man reliving a trial where he was convicted on hearsay. The bracelet. I had the boutique put it on hold. I visited it every other week just to look at it, saving for your birthday. Jenna's was similar, but not the same. The clasp was different. I could have pointed it out. I tried to, but you wouldn't look. You looked at me like I was a stranger practicing a lie. He finally stopped pacing, standing still before her, utterly vulnerable. He wasn't even your friend, Isabella. He was mine, and you chose his word, the word of a man you barely knew, over mine. Over us dash. Why? Was my love for you really that unconvincing? It wasn't an attack. It was the fundamental, unanswered question that had broken him. The question of his own worth. Isabella didn't speak. A tremor started in her hands, then traveled up her arms. Her face, already pale, seemed to drain of the last of its color. The walls of a narrative she'd lived with for 3 years, the story of Ethan's subtle betrayal, were crumbling under the weight of his precise, desperate memories. The lie was in the open, naked and ugly, and she was the one who had clothed it, fed it, let it grow. A small, wounded sound escaped her lips. Then another. Her hands flew to her mouth, but it was too late. A sob, raw and guttural, tore from her chest. The dam broke. She wasn't just crying. She was unraveling, the force of her grief and guilt physically buckling her. She sank to her knees on the cold ground, her body racked with heaving, hysterical waves of anguish. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I couldn't see. The words were gasps between sobs, meaningless fragments swallowed by her grief. I lost you. I threw you away for Elias' stupid, evil lie. Ethan was on the ground beside her in an instant. But he didn't shout. He didn't shake her. His own eyes were bright with unshed tears, but his movements were infinitely gentle. He gathered her into his arms as she wept, her tears soaking into his shirt. He held her, rocking slightly, his cheek against her hair. There was no anger in his touch, only a profound, aching sorrow. This was the proof. Even now, destroyed by her past disbelief, his only instinct was to hold her through the storm she had caused. "Shoo," he murmured, his voice a soft vibration against her. "Isabella, it's okay. Let out." But she couldn't stop. The hysterics turned into hyperventilation, her mind and body shutting down under the overwhelming tidal wave of regret. He felt her go limp, her consciousness fleeing the pain. "Isabella." He scooped her up, her body frighteningly light, and ran. Later, in the quiet hospital room, Isabella drifted back to awareness, to the steady, soft beep of a monitor and the feel of warm fingers laced tightly with hers. She opened her eyes. Ethan was there, seated in the chair, pulled flush against her bed. He looked exhausted, his tie gone, his hair a mess from running his hands through it. But he was there, watching her. The moment her eyes met his, the tears started again, a silent, steady stream. "You're here," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I told you I would be." She shook her head weakly against the pillow. I was afraid. When I wake up, you'll be gone. Again, because I deserve it." Ethan's thumb stroked the back of her hand. "You need to sleep. Your mind needs to rest. The doctor said you need real rest." "I can't," she choked out, her grip tightening on his hand with a surprising strength. "If I sleep, the nightmare will be that I wake up and this, you being here, was the dream. That I'm still in Portland. That you're still gone. That I never knew the truth." Her breath hitched, a fresh wave of panic in her glassy eyes. "Please, don't let me wake up alone." Ethan stood, not to leave, but to perch carefully on the edge of her bed. He reached out, his hand cradling the side of her face, his touch the anchor she was begging for. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low and unwavering, filled with a certainty that brooked no argument. "I'm not going anywhere. I will be here when you close your eyes, and I will be here when you open them. This is not a dream. This is a promise. I am chained to you, Isabella, not by your guilt or my anger, by my choice. I never stopped choosing you, even when you weren't choosing me. Now sleep." He pressed a kiss, unbearably soft, to her forehead. "I'll be right here." Exhaustion, emotional and physical, finally claimed her. Her eyelids fluttered shut, the tension leaving her body. But her hand remained locked in his, a desperate, clinging tether. Ethan watched her until her breathing deepened. Then he rested his forehead against their joined hands, finally letting his own tears fall silently into the sheets. The chains of his love had held, through betrayal and years of silence. And now, at last, they were pulling her back to him, not as a prisoner, but as a sanctuary. Sarah from HR peers in, her face etched with worry. "Ethan, I heard what happened. Is she sleeping?" Ethan whispers, not letting go of Isabella's hand. "It was a severe shock." Sarah slips in, closing the door softly. She looks at Isabella, pale against the pillows, then at Ethan's shattered composure. "I shouldn't be telling you this," she begins, her voice low. "But she's my friend, and I think you need to know." Ethan looks up, wary. "Portland," Sarah says. "When she moved there, after everything, I visited a few times. It was like she was in a self-imposed exile. Her apartment was minimalist, almost sterile, except for one box. A simple wooden keepsake box on her bookshelf. Ethan's breath stills. She showed me once, when she'd had too much wine," Sarah continues, her eyes soft with memory. "It wasn't full of new mementos. It was a shrine to a ghost. The dried daisy from a book. 2 ticket stubs from that indie film about the lighthouse you two saw. A photo of you both, laughing, at some picnic. The edges were worn from being held. She said," Sarah's voice catches. "She said, 'This is my proof that I didn't imagine it. That happiness was real once. She never dated Ethan. Not once. She said she couldn't, that her heart had gone offline. Ethan feels the ground drop away. He had imagined her moving on, building a new life, leaving him in the past. He had never imagined her in a silent, gray prison, visiting his memory like a museum relic. Her life was just work and her brother in that box, Sarah finishes. She wasn't living. She was serving a sentence for a crime she didn't even fully understand. Sarah leaves as quietly as she came. Ethan is left alone with the beep of the monitor and the tectonic shift in his universe. His anger, his righteous pain, it had been a flame fed by the belief that she had simply replaced him, that her doubt was a choice against him. But this was a choice for him, a devastating, lonely fidelity to a love she believed she had ruined. He looks at her sleeping face, the tracks of tears still visible. His chest aches with a new, profound understanding. They had both been in cages. His was built of rage and success, a fortress to keep the world out. Hers was built of guilt and grief, a penitentiary where she was the only inmate. Underscore. Isabella stirs hours later, the deep, medicinal sleep receding. She opens her eyes, disoriented, the memory of her breakdown rushing back with a wave of shame. She turns her head, expecting to see an empty chair, braced for the abandonment she is sure she deserves. Ethan is there. He hasn't moved. His eyes meet hers, and there is no ice in them. No sarcasm, no anger, only a deep, weary tenderness and a sorrow that mirrors her own. She flinches, expecting the storm. Ethan, you kept the daisy, he says softly, interrupting her apology before it can start. She freezes, confusion wiping her face clean. Sarah came by, he explains, his voice a low rumble in the quiet room. She told me about Portland, about the box. A fresh tear escapes, sliding down into her hairline. She looks away, mortified. It was pathetic. It was faithful. He corrects, his voice firm yet gentle. He leans forward, his elbows on his knees. All this time, I thought I was the only one living in the past. I built my entire present on the foundation of that betrayal. My success, my distance, it was all a monument to your doubt. I thought you had moved on, and I was the fool stuck in the ruins. He reaches for her hand again, and she lets him take it. But you were in the ruins too. You were just curating them, preserving them. You were waiting, just like I was, not for an apology, but for a way back to a truth you thought you'd lost. Isabella's lip trembles. I was punishing myself, because if I was happy without you, then what we had wasn't real. And I couldn't bear for it to have been a lie. The final piece clicks into place for Ethan. Her doubt wasn't a rejection of his love. It was a terrified defense of it. If she accepted Leo's lie, then the perfect love she'd lost was still perfect. It was just tragically stolen from her. The alternative, that Ethan had been flawed, that their love had been fragile, was somehow worse. His anger is gone, evaporated in the face of this shared, devastating understanding. He sees not the woman who wronged him, but the fellow prisoner who has been in the cell next door all along, tapping on the wall in a code he was too furious to hear. The prison sentence is over. Isabella, he whispers, bringing her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. For both of us, we're walking out of this together. Today, he doesn't say he forgives her. The word is too small for the canyon they are crossing. Instead, he makes a new promise. No more past. No more ghosts. Just tomorrow. And the day after that. One day at a time. Starting now. He lays her hand back down, but doesn't let go. He simply holds it, his thumb stroking her skin, a silent, steady signal. I am here. We are here. For the first time in 3 years, the future isn't a terrifying blank or a haunted relic. It is a quiet room, a held hand, and a door, finally standing open. Leo's fall was swift and absolute. With the evidence Ethan discreetly helped Jenna unearth, forensic accounting trails, falsified invoices, hidden offshore transfers. The case was airtight. The board voted him out in a unanimous, furious silence. The police were waiting at his doorstep before the ink on the termination papers was dry. But Leo was always a rat, and rats know how to flee a sinking ship. He vanished, leaving behind maxed-out credit cards, a hollowed-out company, and a nationwide warrant for his arrest. The charming facade was now a mugshot on a financial crimes bulletin. The man who had sought to control everything now controlled nothing. A fugitive in a stolen car, his only remaining power a last, desperate lunge at the man who had exposed the void where his soul should have been. His envy had curdled into a poison that consumed only himself, leaving him utterly, deservedly alone. The sunlight was dappled, the air crisp. James, leaning on a cane but walking on his own, was a few paces ahead with his therapist, laughing at something. Isabella walked beside Ethan, their hands not quite touching, but their sleeves brushing, a constant, quiet acknowledgement. Trust was a fragile, growing thing. They spoke of safe things. James's progress, a new book, the stubborn squirrel that kept raiding Ethan's balcony. He said he might try the parallel bars next week, Isabella said, a smile in her voice. It was a small smile, but it reached her eyes. They were learning each other's smiles again. He's stubborn, Ethan replied, his own tone warm. Takes after his sister. He glanced at her, and for a moment, the world was just this, a sidewalk, a sliver of hope, and her. The past was a shadow, not a shackle. The roar of an engine was their only warning. It wasn't the sound of passing traffic. It was a violent, accelerating growl coming from a side street to their left. Ethan's head snapped toward the sound, his strategist's mind processing the threat vector in a millisecond. A dark sedan mounted the curb, aiming not for the road, but for them. For him. There was no time to think, only to act. Ethan moved. Isabella's cry was raw with terror. She didn't just shout. She threw her entire body into his, a desperate, powerful shove that sent him stumbling backwards onto the grassy embankment beside the path. The world became a blur of screaming metal, and her gasp cut short. Thud. The sickening sound wasn't of a direct impact, but of a glancing blow, of a body being whipped against unforgiving steel. The car, its side mirror shattered, swerved wildly, mounted the opposite curb with a screech of tortured rubber, and sped away, vanishing into the city's pulse. Time rushed back in with a dizzying, painful clarity. Ethan scrambled to his feet, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. Isabella. She was on the ground, curled on her side, cradling her left arm against her body. Her face was bone white, her eyes squeezed shut, breathing in sharp, shallow gasps. James was yelling, the therapist was running over, but all Ethan could see was the unnatural angle of her wrist, the way her hand hung limp and wrong. He dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering, afraid to touch. Look at me. Isabella, look at me. Her eyes fluttered open, glazed with shock and pain. You're okay? Her question, while she lay hurt, shattered him. I'm fine. You push me. A ghost of her old, wry smile touched her bloodless lips. Finally, returned the favor. She meant the umbrella. She meant every act of shelter he'd ever given her. Sirens wailed in the distance. In the chaos, with James kneeling tearfully beside his sister and the therapist calling 911 again, Ethan cradled her head in his lap, his fingers trembling as they brushed her hair from her clammy forehead. The rage would come later, the cold, calculating fury at Leo, who had been tracked to the stolen car, who had tried to end it all in a final, cowardly act of spite. But now, there was only this, her broken hand, a miracle that it wasn't her life, and the profound, terrifying truth that had just been written in blood and sacrifice. She had seen death coming for him, and without a second of doubt, she had chosen to place herself in its path. The last wall around Ethan's heart crumbled to dust. There was no more calculation, no more slow burn. As the paramedics gently lifted her onto a stretcher, he kept hold of her uninjured right hand, bending close. You listen to me, he said, his voice low, fierce, and utterly unwavering. "This is it. No more walking beside me. You walk with me. Every step. From now on." Through the pain, her fingers tightened around his. It was all the answer he needed. The attack meant to destroy them had, in its final, failed moment, incinerated the last barrier between them. The past was truly over. The future, whatever held, was theirs. Together. Leo's story ended not with a dramatic standoff, but with a whimper in the rain. He was apprehended 2 states away, found sleeping in the back of the same stolen sedan, hollow-eyed and defeated. The final ledger of his life showed only losses. His freedom exchanged for a concrete cell. His stolen wealth seized by the state, and the twisted envy that had fueled him, now burned down to cold, solitary ash. The man who had sought to control the hearts of others was now a number in a system, utterly forgotten by the world he had tried so desperately to poison. Epilogue. 10 years later, the late afternoon sun slants through the large windows of a bright, colorful classroom, painting the walls in gold. The air hums with the focused energy of a dozen children bent over art projects. In the center, Isabella moves between tables, her voice a gentle guide. Her left hand, once broken, moves with only the faintest hint of stiffness as she helps a young girl steady a pot of glue. On her finger, a simple platinum band catches the light. Across the city, in a sleek high-rise office, Ethan Carter concludes a video conference. The screen blinks off, reflecting a man whose intensity has softened into a calm, assured command. He is no longer Solstice's rising star, but the founder of his own highly respected venture firm. On his desk, amid the polished steel and glass, sits a small, framed photo, a laughing Isabella, covered in finger paint, surrounded by beaming children. His phone lights up with a photo message. It's a slightly blurry picture of their 7-year-old daughter, Chloe, proudly holding up a lopsided clay bowl. The caption reads, "Dash for Daddy's keys." She says it's business art. A soft smile, one reserved only for them, touches his lips. Later, as the sun dips below the skyline, Ethan arrives at the community center. He finds Isabella in the now quiet classroom, stacking chairs. He doesn't call out. He simply leans against the doorframe, watching her. This is the sight that, after a decade, still steals his breath. Not the corporate titan he could have been, but the piece they built together. She feels his gaze and turns, her face lighting with a warmth that time has only deepened. No words are needed about the past. The storms are distant thunder, remembered but no longer felt. At home, chaos reigns in the best way. Chloe's bowl sits prominently on the entryway table. James, now a thriving graphic designer, is over for dinner, his cane a distant memory in the corner. Laughter fills the kitchen, a far cry from the silent, sterile spaces of their pasts. That night, as they stand together on their balcony, overlooking the city's twinkling lights, Ethan's arm around Isabella, the past is a closed book. The man who vowed never to be at anyone's mercy now willingly surrenders his heart every day to the woman who taught him that trust, once rebuilt, becomes the strongest foundation of all. And the woman who once believed she was cursed now knows, with bone-deep certainty, that the greatest fortune she ever found was not in a box of mementos, but in a second chance, walked hand in hand, one quiet, ordinary, perfect day at a time.